So the way I would like to start today is just to spend a few minutes calming and settling the mind in preparation for our session. And we will do that following a similar pattern of what we practiced yesterday. But for the sake of reminding all of us of that, and for the sake of the people who are new here today, I'm just going to repeat some basic instruction that we can practice together. We start by taking what's known as a cleansing breath. A cleansing breath. We breathe in a long, slow inhalation, and feel that with this air that we're breathing in comes a very powerful, bright, white light energy. And this energy is cleansing. It has the ability to wash away or dissolve any physical problem, any mental problem, any anxiety, any dis-ease or discomfort. This white light energy that we breathe in, pull down into us, and just feel that it enters every cell of the body, illuminates every corner of the mind, and then just hold it for a moment. And then, before it becomes uncomfortable to hold the breath any longer, then a long, slow exhalation. And with the exhalation, with the out-breath, we feel we're just letting go. We're letting go. Letting go of what? Well, any tension that we have, any anxiety, any discomfort, any mental problem or any physical problem. These are all like smoke. And when we breathe out, we just let go of that smoke. It comes up and just goes out and dissolves, evaporates, completely disappears. And the reason we do this is that from the point of view of these teachings, our fundamental nature is pure, clear, bright. However, the same way that the sun is clear and bright and radiant, but can be shrouded by clouds, our clear, bright nature can be shrouded by all of the various difficulties we're experiencing, our mental worries, our afflictions, all of these things. They cannot destroy the sunlight nature of our mind, of our heart, but they can cover it. And when they cover it, what happens? We feel bad, we feel confused, we feel anxious, we do things that instead of being helpful are harmful to ourselves and harmful to others. So all of this comes from what is covering the pure nature of our mind. So this cleansing breath meditation, where we breathe in a white light energy and let it dissolve that covering and then let go of it with the out-breath, helps us get in touch with our pure basic nature. Okay? Does that make sense? And we use the power of imagination to help this happen. Imagining the white light, for example, coming from whatever goodness exists in the world. Like many people in this room have met spiritual teachers like His Holiness the Dalai Lama or Kapche Zopa Rinpoche or many others. They have met great teachers like that. So for them, this white light can come from these gurus, because the gurus for them represent this pure white light energy. So you think that it comes from them and cleanses us. Others of us have met other teachers from other traditions, teachers who embody love and compassion and wisdom. Then you can think that this white light energy comes from them. Some people here have not met any teacher, any guru yet. That may happen later, but it has not happened yet. That's possible. But there is still goodness in your life, isn't there? There are things that represent peace and happiness and well-being. For example, there may be a place in nature, in the woods, by the shore, in the mountains, some place that when you go there, you feel calm, you feel clear. It's a place of refuge for you. So you may have a place like that in your life that gives you a sense of goodness and peace. So feel that the white light that you're breathing in comes from there, comes from that place. Okay? So it's very, very individual. What represents a place of refuge for me, what represents a source of inspiration for you, may be very different, but the quality is the same. The quality is that energy which makes us feel complete instead of fragmented, instead of alienated, connected instead of separate, peaceful instead of upset. Right? So whatever place or person or source of inspiration represents that for you, imagine that the white light energy you're breathing in comes directly from there and dissolves the limitations that we're experiencing, the tension and so forth, which we then let go of with the out-breath. So we'll practice that very briefly to begin with, and then I'll give another instruction on how to focus the mind. Because after cleansing the mind, it's very important to try to focus it. And we'll practice that afterwards. Okay? So I think everyone already is in a comfortable posture. And in addition to being comfortable, it should be upright, alert. If we kind of slouch or slump like this, then this leads to sleepiness. So we want to be alert. And it's a very good idea to check our whole physical posture just to see if there's any area that is particularly tense or tight. And if there is, very small movements around that area can help release that tension. Many people hold tension in the shoulders, so you could rotate the shoulders, for example, just to get rid of some of that tension, or rotate the head, or sway back and forth if the tension is in the lower back. Just those small little motions. And then finally, we rest in a calm, upright posture. And then bring to mind the source of our inspiration, whatever it is or whoever it is that represents peace and happiness and well-being for us, a great teacher, a beautiful place in nature, whatever it may be. Bring that to mind. And imagine that from that space, radiant white light shines out. And then when we're ready, breathe in that radiant white light. Draw it down into us so it enters every cell of the body. And then breathe out whatever interferences have been dissolved by that light. And then we can repeat that process 2 or 3 times more. Breathing in the white light energy, letting go of the smoke-colored energy. And then, when we have reached a state of calm and balance, let us give up conscious control over the breath. Just let the breath happen by itself. Let it flow in of its own accord and out of its own accord. Instead of feeling, I am breathing the air, imagine the air is breathing me. And we simply observe the breath flowing into us through the nostrils and then flowing out again. We don't attempt to control it. We don't attempt to judge it. We just observe it, staying in the present moment. And see if we can let our entire attention, our complete awareness be simply on this rhythmic movement. It can be helpful for our concentration if we describe in a very simple manner what is happening at the moment. For example, during each inhalation, as the air is flowing into us, just simply make the observation, breath is flowing in. And then, during each exhalation, we can make this simple observation of what is happening by making the mental note, breath is flowing out. So for the next few moments, this is our job, simply to observe what is happening now. Breath is flowing in, or breath is flowing out. We probably notice that even though our job is simply to observe the incoming and outgoing breath, our attention very easily gets distracted and goes somewhere else. Maybe we hear a noise, and instead of thinking about the breath, our attention goes to that noise. Or it might be a smell, an odor, and our attention goes to that. Or suddenly, a memory may arise in our mind, something that happened earlier today or some previous day. And our attention goes to that. Or it can be the anticipation of something we think might happen in the future. And that grabs our attention. If that ever happens, if we notice that our attention is no longer on the breath, but is on something else, like a judgment, a thought, a memory, the moment we recognize that, just simply let go. Let go. Let go of that distraction and gently escort our attention back to the incoming and outgoing breath. Even if we have to do this repeatedly, do not get upset with ourselves. Do not be filled with recrimination. This is a very common occurrence. So just simply let go of the distraction and bring the mind gently back to the present moment of the incoming or the outgoing breath. So let's do this silently for the next 2 or 3 minutes. And during that time, occasionally I will snap my fingers. This is just a reminder that if our attention has wandered, to gently bring it back to the breath. Okay, let us start now. And now we can bring this brief practice to a close. Simply by resting in whatever state of calm or clarity this practice has generated for us. Just relax into that clear, calm space. So it is very common, it's a very usual practice in settings like this to begin standing up and then offering respect or homage or prostration to whatever we conceive of as to be the source of our, the ultimate source of our happiness and well-being. So for example, when we enter into a space like this, we notice that an altar has been set up. And on the altar are images of this source of goodness and help and benefit that have been chosen by the people who set up this space. So before setting up such an altar, the area has been cleaned and dusted, and then pictures of the teachers who represent this state of enlightenment and happiness and peace have been placed there. So because of this particular center being a Buddhist center and very strongly connected with His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Lama Zopa Rinpoche and the late Lama Thupten Nyeshe, the pictures of those three gurus are placed on the altar. Of course, in other settings, the people's pictures who are put up there could change, but those are the pictures that were chosen because they mean something to the people who attend this center. But if you were to set up an altar in your own house, for example, you would put on it whatever represents this ultimate goodness for you. Okay? And then because this is a Buddhist center specifically, there's images of the Buddha and other items that are on the altar that represent that enlightened quality. And then, as a sign of respect, offerings are placed. So on the altar here you have flowers, you have sticks of incense, you have some very beautiful items placed out, and then you have a series of water bowls. Now, these offerings of water are imagined as being every beautiful thing that you can think of. They appear in the form of water, but as they're being offered out, you imagine all of those water bowls transforming and being filled with beautiful flowers and perfumes and light and all manner of beautiful objects. Okay? At your own altar at home, you might do everything much more simply. You might just have one picture of one teacher and one candle, right? So it is up to you exactly how you set up this altar. You can follow the example that others use, but what's important is that what is presented out there is meaningful to you in your experience and fits with your own patterns, your own psychology. Okay. Now, why is it that an altar like that is set up in the first place? Is this just an empty ritual? Is it just some kind of outward sign? Well, if it stays on that level, then the practice is not very deep. It's not very transformative. But remember what was said earlier, that deep within us, there is already existing a radiant purity. And the way to have this life be meaningful for us and helpful for others is to get in touch with that inner purity, that inner radiance. So one way of doing that is to set up examples in front of us that represent that goodness, such as with pictures of Buddhas, great teachers, or whoever is our source of inspiration. You know, if we were Christian, for example, the images that we set up might be of Jesus or Mary or some other great Christian teacher. Okay? And the same thing is true for any other tradition we might follow. But it's someone or something that represents for us the goodness that we would like to experience in our own life. The goodness which already exists deep within us, but is very often covered. So as we set up these images outwards, or as we simply visualize or imagine them in front of us, and we show them respect by giving offerings, then we're getting in touch with this inner quality. The way my teachers often express it is by paying respect to the outer Buddha, we get in touch with our inner Buddha. Because this is the final object of refuge. The love, the compassion, and wisdom that we all have within us, but which is very often covered over. Covered over, for example, when we get angry. Right? When we get angry, we're out of touch with this inner goodness. When we're filled with jealousy, or arrogance, or greed, or any of those afflictions or delusions, then it's as if what is deep within us is out of reach. It's covered over, shrouded by those defilements, those negative, destructive states of mind. But even in that case, the fundamental purity is still there. So what we need is a method for getting in touch with it. And so such practices as setting up an altar, making offerings, and so forth, are ways of reintroducing ourselves to this fundamental goodness. Now, I mentioned that normally in a situation like this, we start our sessions not sitting down as we did today, but standing up. Why is that? Because one very, very powerful way of getting in touch with both the outer goodness, like the outer Buddha, and the inner goodness, our inner Guru, our inner Buddha, one very powerful way of getting in touch with that is by offering what's often called prostrations, or homage, or respect. And there are different ways of offering this prostration. The most complete way is to stand up and press one's palms together like this, and then touch 4 places on our body while reciting a certain mantra. This reminds us of the enlightened qualities of the spiritual masters. And then bending over and touching the ground, and then standing up again, and repeating that process 3 times. This is a complete prostration practice. But for those of us who are not comfortable doing that, or for someone like myself, whose ankles and back aren't good enough anymore to do these prostrations, then it can be very simplified, just simply pressing the palms together and bowing the head forward. Just that is a complete prostration, because the essence of prostration is paying respect to what's really important. Right? All during our life, we pay respect to things which ultimately aren't that important. You know, like money. We pay a lot of respect to money, and that which gets us money. And money is helpful to a certain extent, but it's never the source of ultimate happiness. And in fact, grasping after it just creates more problems. So we try to shift our attention to that which is really deeply important, which transforms all of our actions into gold. Okay? And so this is what we mean by that inner source of goodness. So we start by offering these prostrations and then reciting, typically reciting a mantra, a prayer, whose meaning is, I take refuge in the teacher. I don't mean me. The real teacher, you know, the enlightened beings, the great gurus. Ultimately, inner guru, one's own fundamental purity of mind. So the first part of the mantra means that. I pay respect, or I take make prostration, do homage to the Buddha, the guru, the teacher. And then next line, I take refuge in the Dharma. Why is a teacher important, such as an enlightened being, a Buddha? Because he or she shows us the path that leads away from suffering and to happiness. And not just temporary happiness, but deep, lasting happiness and well-being. So how does a Buddha, how does a teacher show that? By teaching the Dharma. So the Dharma is the insights, the understanding, the love, the compassion, and so forth. So that's the second refuge. The first is the Buddha as a teacher. The second is Dharma as the teachings. And then the third refuge is the Sangha. The Sangha is the community, those who support us in our practice. Sometimes when the teachers explain this is taking refuge in the three jewels, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, they say that the Buddha is like a physician, someone who can diagnose our disease and provide us with a cure. So the Buddha is like a physician. The Dharma is like the medicine that he or she prescribes. And the Sangha are like the nurses and the attendants who help us take that medicine. So we can think of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha that way. And of course, if we're not Buddhist, if we're not so much interested in becoming Buddhist or following specifically the Buddhist path, then we can easily understand Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha in terms that make sense to us individually. Right? Because Buddhism is not the only spiritual tradition which teaches about love and compassion, right? It's not the only tradition which has great teachers who can help us experience happiness and overcome suffering. Right? It's not the only tradition in which there's a community of people who are very helpful and support our practices. Right? So even if we use these specifically Buddhist terms, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, we can understand it universally. We don't have to be limited in our understanding. Basically, do whatever is really comfortable and works for us. Okay? Because I did not come here from California to turn people into Buddhists. That was not my idea at all. Nor is that really the idea of any teacher who comes here. It's just that from within the Buddhist teachings, there are certain things that people have really found helpful, whether they're Buddhist or not. And it's with the wish to just share that on whatever level people find helpful. That's the only motivation. So from your side, you can take things on whatever level is meaningful for you. Don't feel that you're forced to do anything. Okay. So, in a moment, what we'll do is we'll stand up, we'll align our attention, in other words, we'll direct our attention to what the altar represents. Not only what it represents for the people who set up the altar, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, but what it represents for us. The way to experience the peace of mind, the happiness, the benefit that all of us wish for. Because none of us, no matter what our background is, none of us want to be happy. So you're paying attention. None of us want to be unhappy, right? But of course, we notice that we're constantly doing things and saying things and thinking things that actually make us unhappy, right? So there's something wrong. We don't want the unhappiness, but very often we engage in the very same actions that just make us more uptight, more upset. Okay? And on the other hand, everyone wants, despite what I said before, everybody wants to be happy, whatever happiness means. We don't just mean by happiness here just a moment of pleasure. We mean something deeper, more soul-satisfying than that. A sense that this life is meaningful, that it has some purpose and direction. And basically, all of that involves opening ourselves up to the fact that we live in a world in which we're surrounded by all these other beings who, like ourselves, only wish to be happy and to avoid suffering. And so as we open our heart with love and compassion to all of these beings, we can take refuge, meaning turning our attention to the sources of inspiration, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, however we understand them. Not only so that we ourselves can experience this deep inner peace and well-being, but that we can share it with others. Okay? So, we will, in a moment, just stand up to offer the prostrations, and you should feel free to do it on whatever level is comfortable. As I said, simply standing with an attitude of respect. Okay? That doesn't mean we're respecting the pictures on the altar. We're representing what they represent. That state of goodness that we wish to cultivate ourselves so that we can benefit others. Okay? So, standing in a state of respect, or even offering, if you're familiar with the more complete practice of prostration, and if there's room.